Uh, a very, very warm welcome to all of you to this session. Guys at the end of the room, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Uh, the topic that I was asked to speak on today is something really, really close to my heart. And there are a lot of examples that I'd like to call out this morning, and I'd like to be a participative session, so please, please feel free to, call out some of these answers. Innovate today, lead tomorrow is the topic. And why is innovation as so very important across every industry domain that we have? What is innovation? To me, it's really about seeing those dots that nobody sees, right? And it started not today. I mean, right from the time of fire, the bicycle, the automobile, and all of those were dots that somebody did not see or saw at a point in time. And here we are, right, with innovation at its best in almost every domain. And what I feel particularly excited about is they're all interconnected, right? I come from the world of banking, but then there are so many other spaces that are connected to make, customer experiences a lot better. And it's just not enough if a bank innovates in a couple of areas and domains. I think we need to have the right devices. We need to have things at the right price point. So there are many, many aspects that need to come together for us to be constantly innovating. And why is it extremely difficult in this day and age? It's primarily because of the customer demographic that we have, right? We have various age groups that are using services, and it's not very easy to excite the Gen Zs of the world. And so it's really, really important to constantly be on this vector of reinventing yourself, and for every company out there, right? Whether it is a bank, whether it is a retail industry, whether it is an automobile industry and whatnot. And innovation, to me, is not always about product innovation. It's not about having the best product out there. It also has to be in other spaces. And I'll give you a couple of examples, right? The first one that I'd like to, and there'll be a lot of stories that I'll tell you this morning. So one of them is around business model innovation. And I think it's really, really important. How do you think the automobile industry picked up? In 1918, I think if you took a picture of a New York City street, you would see a lot of horse carriages. A few years down the lane, you saw a couple of automobiles. And then come, around 1930, you took a picture of the same New York City street, you saw about 80% automobiles. What do you think happened in the meantime? Well, I'll tell you what. In 1919, actually, General Motors apparently signed up an agreement with DuPont, and that was what was called the General Motors Acceptance Corps was formed. And what did they come up with? It was not the best automobile, but they came up with a concept of auto loans. And what did auto loans do, right? They actually made people believe that they could afford something that was really, really expensive, right? And so for a person who, in the past thought it was almost a year's salary that he had to spend to go buy an automobile, now he could actually pay it through monthly installments. And that is what bumped up the automobile numbers in the United States. And 7 years later, when you looked at those numbers, 75% of Americans actually bought cars on credit. And that's the same, even if we look at our market, right? It was the same technology, same product, but then at the same capital cost, but it was a different business model that actually drove all of this. And what did this, increased automobile sale do to the market itself, right? The cost was constantly coming down because there was larger and larger demand. So to me, innovation can happen in multiple pockets, in multiple ways, and this is just one of those examples. Another area that I'd like to call out to all of you is, if I look at, say, imaging, for instance, which was the company that invented the digital camera? Anybody in the room? Kodak. Yeah, so Kodak invented the digital camera. And if I look at that time, when in the early 2000s, Kodak was actually doing really, really well. Photography, I think, was the number of photographs taken was actually the highest. If you looked at Kodak's revenue books, amazingly good, $14 billion in revenue. Their operating earnings were about 2.2 billion. They made huge amount of profits. Photo taking was at its highest. And in fact, the market actually called it a great brand with a great balance sheet and a great place to invest. But what did Kodak actually not see coming? They did not see the digital revolution that was happening around mobile devices and the fact that cameras were being brought onto mobile devices. So what happened to Kodak a couple of years down? Kodak actually in 2012 filed for bankruptcy. The reason I'm telling you this story and why innovation is so important is if you look at the top 500, right, on that list of innovators, you keep seeing a lot of them moving, and the amount of churn on those, the top few that are there is so high. And why do these drops happen? Because there is somebody that's missing to see that particular dot. There is another company which all of us know, and which has missed out another revolution that I'd like to call out here, and that is AT&T. Do all of us know AT&T? I think back in 1985, apparently AT&T hired McKinsey to forecast about cell phone adoption in the market. They paid a ton of money to McKinsey at that point in time, and there was a research that McKinsey did. And sometimes even the big fours, big fives, probably go wrong with their numbers. What do you think the prediction from McKinsey was on those numbers of mobile devices and adoption? McKinsey came up with a number of 900,000 by 2000. Now it was a 15-year prediction, and today when we look back at it, it was absolutely wrong. And what was in reality that number in 2000? What do you think that number was? It was about 109 million devices in that market. So I think it's really important. And if you look at the top 10, 12 companies that are in the mobile phone market or the internet and cellular market, do you see AT&T on that top list? You see the Apples and the Googles and the Alibabas and Facebooks and everybody else. But actually, AT&T missed out that particular window of opportunity. So I think it's so, and there were also studies about iPhone and predictions around Nokia and Motorola, where people said these companies were really well placed, and the iPhone may not replace any of these in any of the markets. So why I am calling out these stories, there are, and these are just a few of them, but there are dime a dozen stories of companies that have either failed to see an opportunity or have not had the right product in the market at the right time. So it's not just enough to have a great product. You have to look at the timing for that product. You have to look at the price point of that particular product as well as you're launching something to market. And in the banking industry, I see that all the time because it's really about doing things faster, cheaper, and better. And what does that really mean? The way we manage data needs to be done really well at the back end in terms of you can't have a very siloed way in which we manage data. The expectation from customers is that you provide better and better customer experiences. So everybody, are you able to cross-sell, upsell enough of all the data that you have? I think that's superlatively important. Are you able to bring the cost of your own development down? So do you have, the right storage, or are you pushing a lot of stuff to either, public cloud? Are you able to manage things well? Do you have a lot of stuff on-prem? How are you actually managing development? How are you managing test? How are you actually managing to push a product out to production? I think all of that really matters as we, talk about constantly reinventing ourselves in every aspect of the development cycle, test cycle, and pushing it to market and then placing it in the market as well. I had this, the opportunity to actually have a very small stint with retail. And there I see the level of data mining that is done in the retail sector is, if you go to a mall, there are only people actually look at the lay of the land in terms of the sort of customer base that's probably coming into floor 1 and floor 2. And there are some customers, there are some stores that they'd like to place in those levels, primarily because of the sort of customer demographic that you would have there, right? And so they're constantly evaluating in terms of looking at footfalls, trying to see what are the sort of stores that they'd like to have. There's data that they map at another level as well, looking at the cost of product, the number of days that you want to run a particular sale for instance. If you run a sale for 4 days, are you maximizing the benefit of running that sale for 4 days? Do you need to run that for 2 days? So, I think it's really about constantly relooking at what you're doing and how, and testing that out. Now, I can, ask each one of you, and I'm sure in every one of your companies, you're spending a lot of time to relook at processes, to relook at products, to kind of encourage innovation of sorts, right, within your organizations. And I'd encourage all of you to do that. In fact, we started a few things, and I like to call those out. For instance, we have a no meeting Friday morning. I don't know how many of us can just afford to do that, where we say, in this busy day and age, we say, we're not going to do any meetings. We give that time back to people. Let them, either upskill themselves, build out something new, but create a sandbox environment which is outside our firewall where they can actually, experiment on things. And the reason that becomes very, very important for all of us to also realize is out of 1,000 such solutions that somebody is building, or a little more, there might be that one great idea that you can actually, generate revenue out of. So when we talk about innovation, it's just not these flashy words, but we also need to be ready that we want to make certain investments. We are also willing to lose out on, as I said, 999 ideas might be failures. There could be that one gem of an idea which could probably help you generate a lot of revenue, that is brought into the firm. So I think it's important for us to ensure we're making those investments into our people. There is also another thing that I'd like to call out, right? The ability to celebrate failures. And why is that important? Because I think the entire intent of a constantly evolving and a constantly evolving investment curve into innovation is about yourself recognizing the fact that you can fail, you will fail, but fail fast and reinvest into something else that you believe is really important. So I think all of these are absolutely important as you look at your own innovative, or the innovation index for your firm. And I believe, at least, and I keep telling this to everybody that meets me, I think there are 2 countries which are very, very high on innovation. One, of course, is India, and the second is China, in terms of what we can do and how. Of course, if I look at the global innovative index, I'd probably see Switzerland, and I'd see US and other places. But I think, what we've done at scale in our country, nobody probably has ever even thought of. And can somebody call out the one biggest innovation of modern times that we've had that has actually disrupted the entire country? Sorry? Absolutely. Yeah, and I think there are not many that can talk about anything even remotely close. Today, because I work for a UK bank, we're actually talking about doing something very similar in the UK, which is driven by the Royal Bank of England. But India did that so many years ago, and how it has grown. It's probably one of the most well-written spec that I have ever seen. And it has actually worked so well. The second, and we've done this in, I think, multiple ways, and I feel very proud of what we've done even on this, the fast tag stuff, right? The amount of time that it saves each one of us as we go through a toll gate today, just the ease of experience that there is. So again, innovation is doesn't just have to be that massive idea that there is. But I think it's really about constantly challenging your teams on little things that need to be looked at, and maybe not completely fundamental changes, but really the small ones, right? That you have to constantly encourage people to do, because every time, it's never easy in companies to take failure. And it's not easy to tell your people that it's okay to fail, and then they should focus on the next one. So I feel very close, as I said, to the fact that all of us need to be constantly innovating and constantly reinventing ourselves, and it's okay to fail and look at the next thing, and to understand, that a number of ideas that we might pick up will not be successful, and there could be just that one spark somewhere that will take off. And and I think these industry stories of who's redefined the industry, they come in from pockets that we'd never expect. For instance, who redefined the travel industry? Right? That's Airbnb. I mean, they didn't even exist at some point in time, and today they've redefined that. Who redefined the entertainment industry? It was not Comcasts of the world, right? It's the Netflixes of the world. So, there can be some great ideas that, that come in. But what you would need to constantly look at is that ecosystem, that there is to support some of this. Maybe if the mobile devices, did not make the sort of progression, or the transistor did not make the sort of progression that it did, much of this would not have happened. So I think it's important to also look at some of those parameters and factors that are probably that need to come together as you're thinking of something new, and that would influence a large population. So, well, that's about the little that I had this morning to talk about. I think it's extremely important for our companies to constantly reinvent ourselves, and for us to, put in that bit into investing, and not spending a lot of the dollar that we have into running the engine, but to really ensure we reduce the spend on run the engine, and ensure we are putting a lot of that into innovation, so that we challenge ourselves. Can probably take a couple of quick few questions if there are, and yeah. Actually, I can't hear you. I think they'll get you the mic.
Thank you, ma'am. Great insights. I'm Smriti from Barcadia Commercial Mortgage. My question is, according to you, which industries are most poised to digital disruption in the next decade?
Actually, you should tell me. I think every industry, right? So if I look at healthcare, if I look at entertainment, if I look at automobile, if I look at banking and financial services, almost every industry, I think, needs to constantly reinvent themselves, because digital disruption is going to continue. I mean, whoever thought of generative AI at some point in time? We were all, of course, we still have a lot of questions around governance and how we're going to manage. But that is probably going to, redefine many of these segments. So I think every industry is going to go through this phase of digital disruption, and has to be absolutely ready, right? Connected healthcare, connected education. I can, almost every sector, really.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll probably take just one more question. I think it's time, but
Anybody who would like to ask a question? We are taking one more.
there's one at the very end of the room. There's a gentleman standing at the end of the room.
So we're getting the mic to you because we would like all of the people to hear your question and the ma'am answering it. So yes.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Uh, I'm Rohit from CGI. Uh, wanted to ask a simple question. You spoke about the examples from innovation in typically B2C environments, right? I mean, Kodak or the other examples. I'm wondering whether if there are any innovation in business models in a typical supplier vendor environment that you may have seen. Would you be able to provide any such examples of how business models have evolved or become or have created some sort of an innovation, uh,
You mean in
in that?
supply chain?
Not necessarily supply chain, ma'am, but supplier vendor environment. I mean, we are all typically from services environment here, right? So I was wondering if you have seen any innovation in business models in a typical supplier multi-vendor environment. I mean, things like maybe CapEx to OpEx or something like that.
Oh, well, I think that a lot of our companies have been selling, right? Or at least if I look at the way the growth that I see with companies like TCS or the largest technology services companies that we have in this part of the world, I think there's a lot of business model change as well. From time and material services, they've gone to doing end-to-end product development for companies. And I think that's the expectation from many of us as well when we look at the services companies, saying you're no longer just a vendor sort of relationship to us. You're an equal partner in what we are building, and that's the expectation. So I think that's the change that's happening where you will have to evolve technologically. You will have to get into those white spaces that we're probably not able to look at. And jointly together, we build out solutions that the market really wants. So I think there's a lot of movement that's happening in that sector as well, right? And the people that are not able to do it and staying with traditional models, I think you would see a slump in your own revenue over time or flattening out and then going down. So I think there's a need for reinventing there as well. I don't know if I completely answered you, but I believe that's what's happening in that segment as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. I think it's time, and happy innovating, guys, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.